Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk a little bit about the Article 1 Act, and I want to thank and recognize the work of Mr. Chip Roy of Texas, Mr. Gosar of Arizona for their leadership on the issue. I also want to recognize a member of this committee who, on a bipartisan basis, worked with us to improve this bill, including Subcommittee Ranking Member Titus, Mr. Cohen, and Ms. Norton. My subcommittee held a hearing to examine the National Emergencies Act, exposing the significant risk for presidential abuse of power with the current structure of the NEA. We may not always agree on when or how presidents should use their emergency powers, but there is a clear consensus that there needs to be a strong congressional oversight of such powers. The NEA was enacted by Congress in 1976 to create such a framework for Congress to provide oversight and accountability of presidential emergency powers. The law's intent was to give Congress the ability to review and terminate the president's use of over 130 emergency powers scattered throughout the United States Code. Unfortunately, the mechanisms put in place by Congress were watered down after the Supreme Court case United States versus Chadha, which concluded that Congress cannot unilaterally act to overrule the president's declaration without the president's signature. Effectively, this means that without a supermajority, Congress cannot terminate a declaration without agreement of the president themselves, the very person Congress wants to hold accountable. The NEA also directs Congress to review declarations every 6 months. However, there are currently 41 ongoing emergency declarations under the NEA dating back to as early as the Carter administration, which Congress has not actively reviewed, much less in 6 months or every 6 months. In fact, the only time Congress has effectively terminated an emergency was earlier this Congress with the passage of House Joint Resolution 7, which terminated the COVID-19 emergency declaration. And this was only after President Biden agreed to end the declaration. The NEA also requires the president to submit reports to Congress every 6 months. However, after a thorough search, no reports, none, have been located for any recent emergency declarations that are not solely reliant on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. Now, the NEA can unlock over 130 statutory emergency powers, some of which seem mundane, but others range from commandeering the domestic transportation network to taking over communications channels and distribution of goods. We have no idea what the implication of these laws are. The Article 1 Act flips the script. The Article 1 Act terminates presidentially declared emergency declarations after 30 days unless Congress passes legislation that extends that emergency. The ANS that I've offered on this en bloc removes the changes to IEPA, allowing it to continue operating under the current NEA framework. And while I think it is critical and crucial to reform IEPA, I also recognize there may need to be a separate view of these reforms needed to that law. This legislation also strengthens the reporting requirements by ensuring presidential reports are transmitted to this committee as well as the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs and are made publicly available. I certainly appreciate my colleagues and staff's work on both sides of the aisle to get the underlying bill to a good spot through this ANS, and I urge support of the package, including this piece of legislation.
Would the gentleman yield for a second?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I just wanted to mention the man that brought this to my attention many years ago was a man named Joel McCleary. He worked in the Carter White House. So he's been around for a while. He knows the issue. And I think when somebody brings you something, you need to reflect it. And he's a good man. And I know he's happy today, too.
So noted.
Thank you.
I yield.